Have business to conduct here, please. Is everyone having fun so far? I don't see everybody's hands clapping. Apparently some of you aren't. That's better, that's better. Some of you are making up for the ones that aren't having fun, it looks like.
Generally an overcompensator.
Easy for you to say. All right. Continuing along, as they say. We already did the further ado, didn't we?
Yes. Without.
The next individual, this is interesting, began his bowling career at age 10, excelling at the sport. All right, excelling at the sport. Did you get that? He rolled an 864 series. Now, if you're a bowler, you know this is fantastic. A 900 series is 3 perfect games. 1997. Oh, I thought it was just recently, but okay. Well, geez, that's old news. It was a city record back then. I mean, a lot of records have been broken since then. How old is this program? When sidelined, now this is very informational here. When sidelined with severe arthritis and bad hips, he began writing and became active in radio and TV. Today, 1 year after total left hip replacement surgery, he's back at the lanes and bowling strikes. Ay, this is fantastic. Nice hand for this gentleman. I mean, you don't even know who he is, but you're applauding for him already. Please help me welcome Greg Deguire.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I'm going to share a few childhood memories, most of them having to do with the most important part of Christmas, and that is toys. So when I was a kid, grade school is where it all started. You get to see all these really neat Christmas movies about how the colonials spent Christmas, Victorian Christmases. But the best Christmas movie that I saw when I was in grade school was How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Yes, they showed that in grade school. Nowadays you see it on TV, and my favorite part of The Grinch is how the TV guide, when they used to have actual paper TV guides, it listed it as a curmudgeon tries to stop Christmas for local indigenous personnel. Introduced me to my favorite word of all time, curmudgeon. So Christmas as a kid, it was all about toys. But it started off, you had to do the whole visit the relatives. Every Christmas Eve started off at my Grandma Haig's house. Turns out it wasn't really my grandma, but I didn't know that as a kid. It's my grandma's sister. I don't know where that falls in the line of genealogy.
Great aunt.
Great aunt, thank you. There you go. So she lived in a duplex behind Tremper on the south side. And every year, we would go there every year. But it was difficult to get my brother and I there because as Christmas Eve, we were pretty excited because we knew we were getting new toys on Christmas. So we had to fight to get us clothed and to get us there. And we get there, we get to the side-by-side, and upstairs, Dad, there's nobody here. I'm like, well, what are we, first or last? What happened? We get downstairs, there's like 50 people downstairs. I don't know where they parked or what happened. But it was all relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews, stepsons, whatever. They were all there. And she had the coolest basement of all time. She had a wet bar, beer signs, oh plenty. And that was the first time I was introduced to Christmas lights on the inside instead of strictly on the outside, which explains my fascination with putting Christmas lights inside the house nowadays as opposed to more outside. That's how it goes. Exactly, see them all the time. But then we got to see my cousins, who at the time, well, they still do, they live in a far-off land of Waukesha, Wisconsin. It was difficult to get there as a kid because Dad had the worst luck with vehicles. And he always took the weirdest routes to get anywhere. So if we were going to go to Waukesha to visit him on a non-holiday, it was like Gilligan's Island was a 3-hour tour. Just see him once a year at Christmas, it'll be fine. So Keith and Mike, my cousins, and I always had to ask them. I said, so, need to know if they knew about the war. Do you guys know about the war? What war, you ask? Well, there was the war with the rebellion versus the Empire. Or the war between G.I. Joe versus a secret organization called Cobra. What war they fell on, which were they fighting? Both of them, either one, I mean, what were they into? Turns out they were into a different type of war altogether. Their war started off with robots on a faraway planet who crashed here on Earth, and they hid themselves in society as vehicles, so we wouldn't know that they were aliens. The good guys, formed in shapes of cars and trucks, are called Autobots. The bad guys formed in very sinister shapes like fighter jets, handguns, and the ever-evil boombox. They were known as the Decepticons. That was their war. I wished them luck every year. Not my thing, but fight. Good fight the good fight. So after that, we went to my, that was my dad's side of the family. After that, we went to my mom's side of the family, Grandma Muchler, actually my grandma. So we were allowed to open a few gifts from aunts, uncles, and other visiting family dignitaries that happen to have gifts for us. We were allowed to open a few things Christmas Eve. Now, a wiser man than me once said, open gifts on Christmas Eve? A Jedi craves not these things. This Jedi did, because of the up-and-coming war. And I'll tell you what war this was. This was the war the day after Christmas, when my brother and I received new recruits for our armies. He would get new Star Wars toys, and I would get new G.I. Joe toys, and we would clash. We'd have a war, toys versus toys. Who would come out on top? Now, every year the day after Christmas, my brother always won because he had the ultimate toy, the ultimate Christmas toy. I was listening to a radio show a couple of weeks ago, and the first caller said this toy was like his ultimate Christmas toy. He had the Death Star playset. Still has it to this day, mind you. I didn't have that. I had the Mobat. That was the G.I. Joe tank, the motorized battle army tank. Not so good against a Death Star. And he teased me every year. Still pretty cool. I still have the toy. He teased me, what are you going to do? Drive a tank down the trench? It's not going to work. Not going to work. Besides which, I had very bad leadership. I mean, he had his combined Empire and Rebellion forces. I mean, he had Yoda and Darth Vader. Superior leadership to Cobra Commander, Destro, and Hawk and Duke. Fine leaders, but Cobra has terrible leadership. Terrible. I mean, they blundered every cartoon. They couldn't tie their shoes without screwing something up. So that was one year in particular, that I made out like a bandit. I got new recruits to beat all recruits, because this was after Return of the Jedi and Star Wars toys were kind of failing. G.I. Joe, however, was coming around with lots of new stuff. So what I got for my new recruits, I got the Cobra Rattler. Really cool toy. And any Army freaks, it's the A-10 jet fighter. Lots of guns, lots of missiles. He got the Ewok Village. Point for me. I'm thinking my Cobra Rattler is going to make matchsticks out of that Ewok Village. I will slaughter Ewoks easily. Very, exactly. Then he got a few more Ewoks. I'm thinking, this year I might have a fighting chance. But I also got the G.I. Joe Sky Striker, which is the F-16 fighter jet. So I'm thinking, well, now I have aircraft. I could get to the Death Star. I can get there. But I needed some dirty fighters too, because my guys, turns out, don't have the Force. So anytime I get close to Darth Vader, when it was his turn, he'd make Darth Vader raise his hand and choke half my guys to death. There's just not much I can do about that. So I needed some dirty fighters, because Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were ninjas, but didn't have the Force. So I got some pretty dirty fighters. I got Zartan, shapeshifter, can make himself appear to be anybody. So I can get a spy on the Death Star. And I got Firefly. He was a Cobra saboteur. Again, okay, now I got some dirty fighters. Day after Christmas comes, we're getting our situations all set. He had the dining room table where he put the Death Star place on top. So the dining room was his fort. There's an archway that separated the dining room from the living room. The living room was my territory, so I had to defend a love seat, a recliner, and the Christmas tree. That was my territory. So I would hide toys in the Christmas tree, so even if he invaded, he wouldn't be able to kill everybody. I'd have a few escapees to live and fight next Christmas. So we were about to start. We were about ready to flip the coin to see who took the first salvo of firing things. There was a knock at the door. My Aunt Adele. Turns out not really my aunt. It was a trap. My mom's best friend when they were kids, they worked at Sears when they were 15, her perpetual family friend. Every once in a while, she would show up with random gifts for either Christmas or birthdays or what have you, or she'd show up with like garbage bags full of stuff because she forgot. Some years, we didn't see her for 5 years, and she showed up with like 20 gifts for each. I'm like, well, that's cool. But she favored my brother Chris. He was Chris, I was the other kid, the one that came later. I can dig it, I'm the underdog, I can handle it. So she shows up with 2 packages, one little box for me, and one box the size of a refrigerator for my brother. Huh. I opened mine first, and now I got a Star Wars t-shirt, not the one I'm wearing. 2 sizes too small. Thinking, you know what, I don't care. I'm gonna wear that shirt, and I'm gonna look good while I'm kicking my brother's ass with my new toys. I don't care if it didn't fit, I don't care. Well, let's see what he got. He got the next, probably the second best Christmas toy of all time, Star Wars related. He got the Imperial Walker. Better known as the AT-AT, All-Terrain Armored Transport. And anyone who's seen The Empire Strikes Back knows that armor's too strong for blasters. I had bullets and missiles. The Walker laughed. I didn't have a snow speeder. I can't trip it. What am I supposed to do? Needless to say, I didn't win that year either. I tried to cry foul that the gift came too late. This is fight day. You don't get new gifts on fight day. But he said that if I complained, that meant that I forfeited and he won anyways. Can't argue with logic like that. So that was our thing. I mean, I still have. Anyone who's been to my house knows my basement is a Star Wars montage. It's a museum. My brother still has all of his toys and then some. And a quick side note, I helped my brother move down to Chicago with his girlfriend. He moves in a much smaller place nowadays. So has anyone seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh, yes.
Okay, the end scene where the old guy with the crate and the wheel pushing the ark in the crate amongst a million other crates. That is my brother's storage facility. I'm not kidding. I took a quick count just of the totes that I could see, full of toys. I counted a quick about 320 totes full of toys. He is not single, he's taken. I'll give you his number anyways. So nowadays, I still enjoy getting toys for Christmas. And I brought with me my latest and greatest toy that I got, my favorite toy. If I'd have had this toy back as a kid, I would have won on a sheer principle. Because it's not like a toy, it's not like a fighting toy. I mean, I guess it could be. They make them that you can fight with, but this isn't that. On a sheer principle, I would have won.
You need some help.
I have a lightsaber. Suck it, Death Star playset. I have Darth Vader's lightsaber. Yes, it makes. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas and Yo-Joe.
All right, how many of you can relate to all that? Isn't that fun? And he sounds like he's still in that mood yet, you know?
Rogue One is coming out Friday.
All right, let's continue along here now. A little more serious stuff. Our next presenter has been telling tales to children. This is not good. This doesn't sound good, does it? And I'll continue. This individual has been telling tales to children and adults for more than 25 years. She loves listening to stories, learning about local history, and swimming with a young friend, Cherish. One of her dreams is to write a really fine poem. Help me introduce Mary Norris.
Tonight, I decided that I would tell a literary tale. This story was written and published in Collier magazine in 1943. It's called An Appointment with Love. It was 6 minutes to 6 in December, just before Christmas, New York City, Union Station. And Lieutenant Blandford squinted his eyes and looked up at the clock that was above everything at Union Station. 6 minutes to 6. He could hardly believe it. He was so excited. He was finally going to meet her. The woman that he had never seen, a woman he had never heard, but a woman who had written to him letter after letter after letter. In 6 minutes, he would finally meet her. He remembered not that long ago when there was an air battle and his plane was surrounded by enemy planes so close that he could see the grinning pilot of an enemy plane. And he had written to her not that long before that incident that he was sometimes filled with fear. And she wrote back right away, "Of course you have fear. All brave men have fear. Whenever you're feeling uncertain, think about me. Think about me and how much I care, even though we've never met. And think about me being there for you and with you." And he remembered that, and it helped him get through many other times. He remembered then how they first met through letters. He was in basic training, and of all the hundreds of books that were on the Army base, he just happened to pick up a book called Of Human Bondage, a classic. And he opened the book and he saw writing, and he did not like that. But as he read the book and he read the comments that were in the hand of a woman, he was struck by her insight, her gentleness, her compassion. He looked at the front of the book and there was her name, Hollis Maynell. And there was a receipt in the book from a store in New York City. Well, he got a hold somehow of a telephone directory, and he found her address, and he wrote her a letter, and she wrote back. And the two of them back and forth, even though after the first letter was written, he had to leave for action. But she was a faithful correspondent. Even if she didn't get any letters from him, she wrote to him. He once asked her for a picture, a photograph. And she replied, "Oh no, no photo. I don't really want you to care about what I look like. I want you to care about who I am. For if indeed I was to be beautiful, I would always wonder if that's what it was that kept you writing to me. And if I was plain, and let's face it, that's much more of what might happen, why, then I would always wonder if I was the only one that you could get, the only one that you would even bother writing to. Oh no, when we meet, then we can look at each other, and we'll know each other even better then. And you can decide, and I can decide too. So he gave up on the idea of hearing her voice and seeing what she looked like, and instead he kept and treasured all those letters. And now finally, just before Christmas, he was on leave. He was in New York City. He was at Grand Central Station. Oh, only 3 more minutes until he would meet her. And a young woman walked by, close to him. He had of human bondage in his hand, and he reached out toward her, but then he looked and, well, she wasn't wearing a red rose on her lapel. That's what they had agreed upon. He would have the book, and she would be wearing a red rose. And besides, this young woman was very young, only 18 years old. He had asked Hollis Maynell once in a letter how old she was. And she said, well, I'm 30. I hope that's all right. And he said, well, certainly, I'm 32. Although I'll tell you, he was only 29. So then he walked closer to the information booth, which is where their meeting was going to occur. And another young woman walked by. Oh, she was tall and slender, with curly blonde hair and blue eyes, lips and chin that were firm, a beautiful smile as she looked at him. He reached toward her. He didn't even notice that she wasn't wearing a red rose. He smiled at her, and she smiled at him and said, hello, soldier. And she walked right on by. And he was going to turn to follow her when he saw Hollis Maynell right behind her, wearing that red rose on her old frumpy-looking coat. Oh, she was well on the other side of 40, and she was plump, her feet stuffed into shoes that didn't fit well. She had gray hair tucked underneath her cap. And he looked at her and smiled, and she smiled back at him. But he still remembered the girl who had walked by wearing that beautiful green suit. Christmas green it was. He looked over his shoulder just for a moment, and then he looked back at Hollis Maynell. He looked at her and smiled. He held out the book. He knew that this might not ever turn into be love. But oh, he remembered all of the words that she had written to him, and what a fine person she was. And he knew that this would be a relationship, a friendship. Oh, yes. And he went up to her, straightened up his shoulders, saluted her, and said, I'm Lieutenant Blandford. Oh, you must be Miss Hollis Maynell. I am so happy to meet you. I'm so glad that this moment has finally occurred. And she smiled back at him and she said, well, soldier, I'm not sure what all of this is about, but I know that that young woman who was wearing the green suit asked me just a minute ago if I would wear a red rose on my old coat here, and that I would be meeting you, and that if you came up to me and started a conversation, that I should smile and see what you had to say. And he smiled and said, well, I'd like to invite you to join me for dinner tonight. She said, oh, that's what she thought might happen. And she gave me a message to meet her across the street in the restaurant that's there. You know, I'm not sure what's really going on, but I've got a couple of sons that are serving the country right now, and I'm always proud to do what I can to help out. And I want to wish you a very happy Christmas.
Whew. Was that fantastic or what? Very well done, very well done. Our seventh presenter this gentleman has been writing for much of his life. What else does he do? Does he eat and sleep? His creative joys include writing children's stories and poetry. He's also writing a classic love story novel. He prides himself on being a visually creative writer. Ladies and gentlemen, help me introduce Jeff Sturycz.
Oh. This is a story. This came to me in 1983. 1982 was kind of a rough patch. It was good. I graduated from high school. We can have some applause. You know. All right. It was almost like shortly after you graduate from high school, you think, okay, you got, everyone's going to be, good job, hey. You know. Parents said, we're getting a divorce. I thought that was kind of like, do gifts come along with this divorce? I'm sure it is later on. So it was kind of a rough end of the 82. Then 83 thinking, okay, things are going to be good. We're gonna go forward here. And my younger brother's 11 years younger than me, and so he knew sadness and what was going to be divided. But what was to happen later in that year, I thought to myself, I don't ever remember the last year and the year before that bouncing around on the couch because it's going to snow tomorrow, or that it's only 3.5 days till Christmas, that we're going to go over to the grandma's house and that's where the presents happen and all the family happens. It started to slip away, and I didn't want it to slip away. I remember laying in my bed thinking about the snow doesn't look, last year's snow didn't look white, it looked like dirty, street dirty. No one wished Merry Christmas, it was Happy Holidays, so they don't have to commit to anything, which was kind of lame. Well, I pretended I was Santa Claus for my brother. I wore a purple jacket, he didn't know the difference. I got a pillowcase, and I threw stuff in there, and I just covered my face, and he thought whatever, so I thought that was fun. It was when I started to forget some of the joys about Christmas and just being together, and not even so much Christmas, but family. So I lay there the one night, and it wasn't laying there waiting for Santa, listening for hoof prints. or mom faking jingle bells in the, she had like, I don't know, she had a reindeer thing that she jingled and all with. I thought it was hysterical the more we got older. She's also would hear, jingling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. All right, and then she'd peek in to see, okay, the older boys are asleep. Michael was never asleep. He was always like, recon on the floor. Ma's down the hallway, don't let her know I'm here. So I woke that next day, kind of muddled through the day, walked through the living room, the Christmas tree. It was just limp in the corner. It wasn't like a vibrant, we'd gather around it and we didn't look at it like, I know I didn't look at it the same way. Well, my mom's sister called me that afternoon. She worked for the city. And she said, Jeffrey, the person that was supposed to play Santa Claus tonight canceled. He's got a horrible cold. Will you do this for me? I've never been out, put myself out like that. And I just said yes. Right away I just said yes. So she said, oh, thank you so much. You saved me. So I go to it was at the courthouse here. I go there, they have the costume and everything for me. I'm in a judge's room, which I don't like judge's room now. Okay. So I'm in the judge's room there, long table and everything. I'm Googling on whatever here. Sitting there and I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you going to enjoy this? Or what? I'm talking to myself. And so I hype myself up. I go out into this lobby. And there are all these excited faces. And the murmur, Santa's here. And I get this chill because that's what I was. I was those kids that stood in line waiting to see Santa Claus. And they were deep, and I wasn't terrified, but I was like, okay, get into your grandpa voice. Hey, you. And so I got into all that. Mrs. Claus, she was wonderful. She was like, just so, like, go along. We had no little elves to kick around or anything like that, but, we were good. But the kids that came up there had all drawn me pictures. Everybody in there drew me a picture. Some looked like you would see in psych ward. What do you see this? Oh, I see my failing death. That's very good. Who? What? Why? Huh. And then you do a lot of hoofs. And then you do a hook and you're Santa. That's all you had to do. Well, one kid came up there and said, Santa, I didn't eat any boogers. And I said, oh, that's marvelous. That's absolutely marvelous. What do you want for Christmas? A toy and something to eat. Okay, that's great. And then there was another boy. It seems like the boys were like the guys, the squirrels, Said, I almost made it 4 days without hitting my sister. And I said, 4 whole days? This is marvelous. My Santa. There was more, and they got candy canes, and they were happy to see me. And I looked over, and there's Mrs. Claus. I can't remember her name, Judy, I think it was. She's like, just watching me be something that was supposed to be in that room that day, so I was supposed to be there. The crowd was thinning, it was getting a little bit late, and there was a little girl, she was like the last person, and she was a little terrified of Santa, but she didn't know, I don't know what her total thought was, but it was, I said, well, what is your name? What is your name? You are not the last person in line. You are just the last person here to see me. And she says, my name is Susan. And I said, what does Susan want for Christmas? Let's see what Santa can do. And she said, I want a job for my dad. I did everything that I could not to cry. So I said, what does your father do? He said, he works. I said, is he a hard worker? He said, Mom says that he's a hard worker. And I said, I tell you what, I promised you that your father will get that job. But what can I get for you? She said, well, I haven't really given it much thought, but anything you think that would be good for me. And so as she left, a little curly-haired girl, I remembered Susan, and she made me a drawing of a kind of goofy reindeer, but it was a reindeer. I gave her 2 candy canes because I just didn't know what else to do at that moment. So there was no one in the lobby anymore. So I stood there thinking that this was really Mrs. Claus, and this is why Santa has crystal eyes. It's because he's warmed by all of the belief and all of the people that come to see him. I step outside. I go on the steps of the courthouse, and I'm waving and I'm yelling out, ho, 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 and everything. Cars are pulling up. Some of the parents are letting their kids come on out. And one little boy ran across and he hugged me. He says, that's all I wanted to do was hug you. Mom said we couldn't stop, but she let me come out and hug you. Well, that same night, I got home. Took a little while to get the eyebrows off. It was kind of, I think I put super glue, I don't know. I lay there and I listened for hoof prints. And I read all these little Santa, I like you. You're really cool. And so I read these and I kept them for years. I don't know where they are now, but I kept them for years. And the next morning, I overhear a conversation that my mom's sister, the one that hired me to do this, I overheard because she was like so loud with the phone. Then I went to the kitchen. She said, Mrs. Claus just called me. She said that was the best Santa ever. He was so engaging. And she has been doing it for 15-something years. She said he was so good. He was so great with these children. He gave them what they were there coming for. Gave them the Christmas. And I thought to myself, I gave them what I was lacking, what I was forgetting, what I wasn't remembering. Thank you.
Another heartwarming story. Well, we're approaching our last storyteller. I hate to say that, I'm having fun. Aren't you having fun? Are we having fun? Our next reader, storyteller, is a retired Kenosha Unified librarian who has been telling stories for many years. I don't like the sound of these things when people are telling stories. It just doesn't come across right. But to make books and stories come to life for youngsters, okay, that kind of changes that. She has a background in community theater and writes historical fiction. Ladies and gentlemen, help me introduce Carol Knudson.
Collections that they have over the years. I happen to collect different versions of The Night Before Christmas. And so you may not know it, but there's probably 200 at least. If you look online, different versions of The Night Before Christmas, you'll find umpteen of them. This one's called the Cajun Night Before Christmas. This got me started a long time ago, and it's the one where they have Christmas in Louisiana in the Bayou country, and he comes in a skiff pulled by alligator because they don't need reindeer down there. And this is actually true that in the big Christmas parade that they have mechanical alligators pulled by skiff. And they have Cajun names. They have like Tiboy, Pierre, Alsace, Ginninech, Sepp, not Rudolph and those other ones. Here's the Irish Night Before Christmas.
They're all
And-
drunk.
Yeah, they like to sip the poutine and when they stop in the Irish Christmas. And each one of these is written in dialect. So if you were to look at these, they don't look like they're spelled correctly because they are written phonetically, the way they're sounding. This is the Texas Night Before Christmas. In this one, he comes by a chuck wagon pulled by steer. And they have all cowboy-sounding names. This is the Redneck Night Before Christmas. There's the Soldier's Night Before Christmas, the Teacher's Night Before Christmas, the Native American's Night Before Christmas, the Politician's Night Before Christmas. There's a ton of them. This is the Prairie Night Before Christmas, which is very similar, but a little bit different. This is the Country Music Night Before Christmas. And the one that they asked me to do tonight is called the Hillbilly Night Before Christmas. Hence the prop with the hillbilly hat. And remember, it's in dialect, so you have to kind of figure out what it is that they're saying, because it's not kind of like we talk up here. Because we come from a different country, according to them. 'Twas the night afore Christmas, 'twixt Bridgeback and Howler, no critter was twitching, nary hog that's to waller. Each careful darn stocking were nailed near the chimbley, a hoping that Santy'd be an extra bit friendly. Old Ma in her night dress and me and my lawn johns was snoring as happy as frogs in the lake ponds. The young'uns was stuggled, gubbed deacon their tickin', dream conjuring up oranges and striped candy lickin'. When all of a sudden came a scared painter screechin'. Ain't heard such a ruckus since camp meeting preachin'. Was that worthless hound blue with a growl full of shiver? He tried to crawl neath the bedstead. I throwed off the cover. I grabbed for my rifle gun, most fired it off too. Then trembling in stocking feet, near tripped that old blue. Our plank door creaked dreadful, just opening a mite. So's I knowed flat out certain haunts walked in the night. There's a bright pumpkin moon to bring moonshiner's sorrow, with a middle day brightness like the woods was afire. Kind of wee dreamy, way yonder, pure floating up air, came an old-timey wagon and ain't Smoky Bear. With a sawed-off old peddler, I knew in a minute it had to be Santy. To be hummingbird wings, them Bear Castle came. He whistled and hollered and he called them by name. I'm Molasses, A.G. Suzette, and Bonet. And he called them all the names that he could think of. And then he said, to the top of the wall, and get over that hen house, slide out to the shed. Now mind you on honey bears, just mind what I said. As biddies from serpents, my ma's striped cat flustered this way to go, firstly this and then that, so's up to the tin roof, them spry varmints clumb, with a good few purties and old Santy by gum. And directly I heard such a terrible tromping, like hail big as biscuit bread or store teeth a-chomping. Though I near met myself, turned quick as a toad, Santy skinned down that chimbley 'fore I ever knowed. He was snorting and fussing, stomping snow from his seat, brushing off soot leavings what stuck to his seat. He'd a mouth made for smiles, twice too big for elf size, red jelly bean nose and shoe button eyes. His breeches and coat was pure urination, of quilting piece patches to beat all creation. He had spenders and belt like a man with a callin', to exactly be certain his pants wasn't falling. You could tell he liked victuals like stack cakes and spoon bread, and always took seconds when seconds was fed. He'd grandpappy whiskers, but his twinkled eyes made him look like a young'un whose smile never lies. He was plump full of happy, both cheeks puffed out wide, like a chaw of tobacco was held in each side. A burned back old corn cob he peered about to swallow. Every which way he goed, that smoke seemed to foller. He scrinched an eye, gave a how do you do grin. Not an orphan or a widow could have been as scared then. He was more do than talk to his work, bent his back, stuffed them stockings right quick, and then hefted that there sack. Then a puntin' me hush, till my sit a spell frizz, with a meetin' house nod, up the chimney he riz. To his wagon he scrambled real squirrely and sprightly. He whipped those honey bears just a little soft and politely. They lit out a scalding like billering pups. Old wagon, old Santy red wagon, and smoky bear cubs. But I give him a holler afore he got clear. Merry Christmas, old boy. Y'all come back, you hear?
One question, does the library know that you have these books?
Yes, I have them in my library. The kids like them.
We hate to see you pay a penalty on those, you know?
Oh, these are my own books.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah. So you say. Did you enjoy this? I think that a lot of you probably are interested in maybe doing the same type of thing. The Writers Guild would be looking for more members, I would assume. Do we have someone here from the Writers Guild that would like to come up and talk? Don't all come up at one time.
Oh, well, I'm
Come on
not,
up.
see, I'm not a representative of them, but I'll talk for them, because I've been with them for a while. All right.
See, I'm not a member of them, so.
The Kenosha Writers Guild is people that meet twice a month, the second Thursday of the month and the third Thursday of the month at Carthage. They throw you around in different rooms. You'll never know where they're going to be at, so make sure you check the website first. But they're amazing people. If you like to write, if you like to tell stories, if you like anything to do with the written word, these are the people to go see. They'll tell you, they'll help you, they'll show you. They'll never push it on you, but they're an amazing group of people. Lisa, Jim, Dave, you know, everybody. They're a great group of people. If you want to write and you care about writing, go see these guys. They'll help you out. Like I said, second Thursday, third Thursday of the month, every month at Carthage.
www.kwg.com.
www.kwg.com, and they're on Facebook too, so yes, check them out.
Thank you very much. I think that little plug would be very satisfactory and advisable, actually, you know. Because I know a lot of you are watching and think, I can do better than that. I can't, but I'm sure that there are writers out there. So, did the ones that were never here before, did you enjoy this for the first time?
Yeah.
Isn't that great? It's a real treat to listen to other people give their little presentations here, you know, factual stories. Factual! No falsities at all here, all factual. It actually happened to them. I mean, this is like Facebook. It's on Facebook, it's actual, you know.
That's like TV doesn't lie.
No phony baloney. Well, listen, that concludes our event for this evening, and we thank you for showing up, and looking forward to seeing you the next go-around. Thank you very much.